Good day, everyone. Eric from Helps YouTube Live today on January 28th, 2026. Good to have you here. My name's Eric Olsen, attorney now for, I think I decided I'm an attorney for 48 years. A long time. And the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm. Represents seniors and disabled persons who owe debt they can't afford to pay in order to stop debt collector harassment. The title for today is going to be Don't Be Scared by a Process Server, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I'm going to start out with a note from a person from Arizona. They said, um, and I'll get to, if you have any questions, put them in the chat feature. I see there's a couple there already. I'll get to those, okay? But this person contacts us from Arizona. I have debts of $16,000 and actually involve the national NDR, National Debt Relief, for my debt relief, but it takes a long time. It's harder to survive paying off my debts. Can you help me? I'm looking forward for your response. So, if you've been listening to me a while, you'll know that I talk often about debt management, debt settlement companies. And if you're involved with a debt settlement or debt management company, my question to you is, did they ever tell you that your income was protected when you enrolled with them? Did they tell you no one could touch your Social Security and that there was a way to stop the credit harassment? And if they didn't tell you that, you weren't given complete information. And most seniors I talk to, the vast majority are never told that. Instead, some of them are enrolled in debt management and put into utter poverty, making a payment they can't afford to pay. So for the fun of it, I got a couple articles here from National Debt Relief. Uh, so this one is, so we'll just look at it for a second. I think you'll. There we go. Credit card debt help. Free resources, senior assistance, and relief strategies from National Debt Relief. Okay. Uh, Understanding credit card debt relief options. Balance transfers. Okay. Debt consolidation loans, debt management plans, debt settlement. Uh, and then they put down here, forgiven debt over 600 may be considered taxable income by the IRS. Uh, Rarely is that ever a problem. But anyway, okay, free credit card debt help, nonprofit credit counseling agencies, government okay. And then there's one little paragraph for seniors of Social Security. It's essential to know that most credit card companies cannot garnish these benefits except for federal debts like taxes or student loans. Uh, Never does it mention the fact that your pension is also protected. So is your 401, so is your IRA. And then it talks about crafting a personalized debt strategy, creating a budget, when to consider bankruptcy, the bottom line. So the author's, I'm sure she's a good person, but not an attorney. She's a freelance writer. It'd be kind of like it'd be kind of like a uh, let's see, me talking about heart surgery as a bankrupt as an attorney. Nowhere in the article from National Debt Relief does it mention the fact that the pension's protected and that you can stop the creditors from harassing you by sending a cease and desist letter, and they can't take money out of your bank account. Explain all your rights. It just steers people toward debt management or debt settlement to their company because that's how they make money. And I have another article I won't take time from National Debt Relief shows the same thing. So that's the problem with debt management or debt settlement is they don't give people complete information. That's the problem I have with them. If they told you that your income was protected, you wouldn't enroll with them. They wouldn't make money on it. So we'll ask, hey, Eric, quick question. Does a lawsuit judgment have a statute of limitations like the credit card, or is that the same thing? Well, okay. Um, it's kind of like the same thing, but okay, it's under state law. Uh, a creditor that you owe money to has a certain amount of time to be able to file a lawsuit. Okay, and that depends on the state. Could be 5 years, could be 6 years. I think in a couple states it might only be 3 years, but usually it's 5 or 6 years to be able to file a lawsuit. After that, they legally cannot sue you. Now, if they get a judgment against you, a judgment is good for under state law for a certain length of time. It could be 5 years, 6 years, it could be 10 years. 10 years is common. Often it can be renewed. Okay. But once again, if your income's protected, it doesn't matter if there's a judgment, they can't collect from you. So let's see here. Hiren, after 6 years, Capital One sent me a 1099-C. Just proves after all these years they will still send them. Not a big deal as my accountant knows what to do. Okay, so a 1099-C, we get asked that a lot. Probably you're not going to need to worry about it. What that is it's a form that an original creditor, when they write a debt off, and after 6 years, that's a long time, but they send it to the IRS and they send you a copy. Once again, technically they're required to do it if it's over $600. Often they don't do it. Are you going to owe any taxes? If your only income is Social Security, no. If you have other income, probably not. And even if you do have other income and you do file taxes, um, if you're insolvent, which means if your debt exceeds your assets, there's a form you can file 982 where you don't owe the tax. But let's say you did owe a tax. Often you can qualify for what's called currently not collectible status. So we don't have a problem with 1099-Cs with our clients. Very rare is that ever issue. Extremely rare. Okay. So we don't worry about a 1099-C, but they talk about it, or they'll say, like that article I just showed you from um, National Debt Relief. They say, well, you might get a 1099-C. Uh, they tell you that because it makes you scared, thinking, oh, I'm going to have to pay taxes, so I better pay this debt when you don't need to. Okay. Um, so I'm going to, here's a person contacted us from Missouri. I was sued by Midland Credit Management and they won by default because I was sick. I called the county clerk the day before my hearing and asked for a continuance due to the fact that I was seriously ill. Judge here granted the default judgment against me. It is on the record that I called in sick. I am 68 years old. My wife is 65. I receive Social Security and she receives annuity payments from the U.S. government retirement program. I was informed by the lawyer today that LVNV Funding is going to sue me too. Can you contact these companies and inform them that their lawsuits are futile because we live paycheck to paycheck and still don't have any money in our account 3 days? You don't need to worry. This guy doesn't need to worry. See, when if you're getting Social Security or a pension, or in this fact, this annuity, okay, annuity is protected under state law, and it's a federal annuity. Those funds are protected. They can't be garnished or taken from you. But what about when they're deposited in your bank account? Well, they're protected there too. A federal law went into effect in 2012 that tells banks if they get a writ of garnishment, they have to examine your bank account. And if money went into that account from a federal source like Social Security, they take the amount you receive within the last 60 days, which is usually twice the amount. That amount is protected automatically from garnishment by your bank, regardless if there's other funds in there. So if you get 2,000 in Social Security, 4,000 in your bank account is protected. Even if you got money in there from something you sold, a gift from a friend, or any other source, it's protected as long as it's twice. Now, if you happen to have more than that in there, the balance can be protected. You can file a challenge to garnishment claim exemption to get it released. But you don't even have to worry about it unless you're sued. Someone sues you and gets a judgment. Um, So what happens when people enroll in helps? We'll get 5 people will call. Maybe one's being sued, 3 or 4 are harassed by creditors, and maybe 1 out of 5 is completely current. Now, if you're being sued, you can get us. You can when you enroll in helps, you're going to get us a copy of the lawsuit. We just need the first 3 or 4 pages. We're going to send a cease and desist letter out to the. We're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued you, letting them know that your income is protected. You're not going to go to court. They can get a judgment. Remind them of the protected nature of your bank account, although they can't take it anyway. We're going to call you on the phone, explain to you why you don't have to go to court, why you don't have to worry about the lawsuit. Um, so it doesn't matter where you are. If you're being sued, if you're completely current on everything, or if you're being harassed, you can always enroll in helps. And then what we do when you enroll in helps, we ask you some questions. When you decide you may call us 3 or 4 or 5 times before you decide to enroll. We don't turn anyone away. The cost is absolutely minimal. And then when we enroll you, we click a button. You're going to get an email from us while we're on the phone that says, "Welcome to Helps." That has all our contact information, address, phone number, email addresses. It gives you instructions how to get us the collectors. You're going to get us your collectors. We're going to need the name, address, and account number. We don't need the balance. Then within our goal is within 24 hours to send them a cease and desist letter. And under federal law, passed in 1978, called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, provides if you're represented by an attorney, these debt collectors can't talk, they have to communicate with us and not you. Okay, so that's what we do. We represent seniors ongoing so they don't have to deal with debt collectors. I probably filed between 30 and 40,000 bankruptcies before Helps was started in 2012. My old firm is still in existence. It's a big firm. They do a ton of bankruptcies. But I started Helps because seniors would come into me and I tell them you don't need to file bankruptcy because your income is protected. A lot of them couldn't afford to file bankruptcy. But I knew when I sent them home, the creditor was going to call them on the phone and make their lives miserable. So Helps was started in 2012, and I withdrew from the firm in about 2015 just to run Helps full time. And so our clients don't need to file bankruptcy. They can't afford to file bankruptcy. But what we do is we protect them from the creditors harassing. And the magic about Helps is we represent you ongoing. It's not just one time. It's literally for the rest of your life. So you never have to deal with debt collectors again. You call us as much as you want. Okay. So I'll give an example now. I talked this morning with a guy from Arkansas, and I told him I'd talk about him today. Okay. He's married. He's 60 years old, and his wife is 42. And he called me originally. Um, he's retired from the military, and he gets quite a bit of money. He gets Social Security plus he gets a pension. Okay, from the armed services, about $7,500 a month. I told him, and he's worried because someone is trying to serve him a summons. And he says they're looking at me with the binoculars. Okay, and he was really kind of terrified. I told him, you don't need to worry. Okay, the reason they're trying to serve you is because they get paid a fee if they serve someone. Okay, um, if they serve you and they get a judgment, twice the amount of your federal benefits, which is your Navy, your retirement, and your from the military and your Social Security, twice that sum you get each month is protected automatically from garnishment. Now, if you had more than that in there, it's still protected. Just have to file paperwork to get it released. But he says I never have more than that in there. I said, well, don't need to worry about it. So twice the amount is protected automatically. You're not going to have to go to court. You know, he was a Helps client. I said, when you get served with that paperwork, just get us a copy. We're going to send a letter to the attorney who served you, let him know your income's protected. You don't need to worry. And I reminded him, I says, now listen, you need to call us. He's been really worried. You should have called us sooner than that. I'm glad he called today. I actually called him, or I picked up the phone. This morning the phones were ringing. I picked it up and I talked to him directly. You don't need to worry. Now, he said, well, I want to talk about getting a reverse mortgage. He said, well, he had a home that was worth about 400,000, but he owed about 160,000. He had a first and second mortgage. I said, you're not going to get a reverse mortgage. Why is that? Well, because you're not 62 yet. You're only 60 and you have to be 62 and your wife is like 42. And so they own it together and there's no way on God's green earth you're going to get a reverse mortgage. You don't have enough equity in the home and the fact that she's so young and you're not, you're still young. Even if you were both 62 or 60, you probably wouldn't qualify because of a little bit higher interest rates today for a reverse mortgage. No one can take your home. You live in Arkansas. It's completely protected, okay, under Arkansas state law, under the homestead exemption. If they get a judgment, they can't do anything. And then I said, you're probably going to pass away before your wife is, right? And he says, yeah, I'm 20 years older than she is. And I said, well, fine. When you die, the home will automatically transfer your wife. And if someone's, and he was the only one that looks like was going to be sued, that was being sued. If they have a judgment, when you die, the judgment disappears. A judgment is only a lien on real property, on property that you own. And when you die, that property automatically transfers to your wife because you own it jointly with survivorship rights. You're dead. Do you still own the property? He says, no, right. You're in heaven. You don't own the property. Your wife owns it. And therefore that lien drops off. And he was relieved about that. And apparently his kids were scared about that guy trying to serve the summons. You don't need to be scared. Um, he's just trying to earn his fee by serving you. He was going to call him up and tell him to come serve him, so he get it out of the way. Then you're going to get us a copy. We're going to send a letter to the attorney who's sued him, tell him not to worry. Now, you want to know about bankruptcy? Well, the problem with the bankruptcy is he had a vehicle that was worth $20,000, and the exemption in Arkansas, I think it's only like $1,200 on a motor. You can't file bankruptcy. You got too much equity in that car. Trustee would take it. Um, so that's kind of what we do. We give legal information. We don't represent people in court. And when I was done, he was feeling a lot better. And I told him, I said, and I say this to anyone, he was only a member of HELPS. His wife wasn't a member. She was working. I said, if you want to call back with your wife, I'll explain this to her so she understands that, so she's not worried as well. Okay. And he said, yeah, I think I'll do that. So she may be listening to me. Um, they're going to be fine. She doesn't have to worry about it. I said, your wife should be very grateful because you've got a pretty good retirement income from the military and from your Social Security that she's going to participate in when you pass away. Plus, you've got this equity in this home. You're going to be fine. She shouldn't be worried at all. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I got any more questions here that I need to deal with. When a person gets served, do the server have to hand you the papers, or can they leave it on your door or mailbox? Normally, they have to hand them to you. It depends on state law, but like I think yesterday I mentioned the fact the guy opened his door and the papers were just thrown on the ground. It probably wasn't proper service, but you could object to it, but kind of a waste of time. You owe the money, and it's kind of complicated to object to service. And even if you did object and you did win, then they could just try to serve you again. Okay. Hi, Eric. Has been listening to you for a minute. I understand my Social Security is protected, but I'm worried they will come after my home. The debt is for a solar loan. Well, okay, let's talk about that. I don't know. Virtually all solar loans are not mortgages. It's a UCC lien. It's a lien on the solar panels on your. So the remedy, if you're in default, is to come repossess the solar panels. And under UCC, that's Uniform Commercial Law Code. Under that law, that solar loan technically, that UCC lien is only good for I think like 6 years. After that, it goes away. The only way it can be a problem is if you go to sell the home within that 6 years and maybe even beyond, the title company might say, well, this is a problem because there's an outstanding UCC lien. But them taking your home is not an issue. Are they going to repossess the solar panels? I talked to a lot of people that says, I wish they would. They're not going to do it. Once the solar panels are up there, they become worthless. Okay. Okay, this guy Cindy says Weber and Olsen in Michigan seem to be taking much of the debt that has been passed from one collector to another. I'll tell you why. Probably more people in Michigan get sued than any other state. I'm guessing that, but I'm probably pretty right, percentage wise. Why is that? Well, because in Michigan, Michigan has a law that says even if you're renting, you can get a tax rebate from the state for property taxes, even if you're not buying the property. They impute that your rent goes to your landlord who pays property taxes, therefore you should get this rebate, which is could be $1,200, $1,400. So it's kind of nice. They give it to seniors or people that are lower income. Okay, that's nice. But the problem is, under Michigan law, they let a creditor garnish the Michigan Department of Revenue to get that refund that you're entitled to. So with one hand, they give you this refund, and the other hand, they allow a creditor to take it from you, which isn't quite right. I don't think the law was originally designed to help people that were poor. And I've written to the Detroit Free Press. One time, a few years ago, I wrote to I think half the legislators in Michigan and said, "Why don't you guys do something about this? You got this nice law that gives these poor people this money, but you let the creditors take it, and as a result, all these creditors sue the Michigan people." Um, I never heard back from anyone. Anyway, um, so that's why. So this debt collector, they're probably suing everyone and then getting judgments, and then they're filing risk garnishment against the state revenue department to collect any refund you're entitled to. So what do you do about it? Well, one reason, if you're married, that's against you. Just have your spouse file the tax return. Then it's going to come to him or her, not you. You could file bankruptcy, wipe out the debt, then you'd start getting the refund. Um, Angel says, I received an order granting plaintiff's motion for non-suit. Um, what does it mean? Well, it means this is what it probably means. They sued you, and maybe they served papers on you, or maybe they didn't get you served, or whatever. Or maybe they served you and they didn't follow up with the paperwork they were supposed to submit to the court, like maybe an order for default judgment or something like that. And so a lot of courts, they want the case docket to move forward. And if they don't, if the person that sued you doesn't file right paperwork, court will simply dismiss the case because they didn't pursue it non-suit. Now, without prejudice means, yeah, they could file the lawsuit again if they want to. It's going to cost them another fee. Without prejudice means they could file the lawsuit again. That's what it means. Um, Midland Credit sued me twice. They keep sending me interrogatories over and over after getting two judgments. You talk to us, we tell you what to do about that. I came in late. I did hear you say when a person dies, the judgment against them goes away that was placed on real property. That is correct. A judgment is a lien on property that you own. So if you own the property jointly with someone else, then when you die, that property goes to the survivor. Now, if the property was only on your name, then and you die, and it's just in your name, then the judgment lien would still be in effect because it's still in your name. But if someone else's name was on the property so that when you die, it automatically went into the other person, then you no longer own the property. Got it? Um, so this person contacts us from California, and he says, "Hello, currently I'm in credit card debt. I will have a civil judgment against me next week in Superior Court in Los Angeles, California. I'm 76 years old and currently only have my Social Security as income. I've been borrowing about $1,000 per month from friends to get me through until I begin a commission phone job next week. I only have a 2018 car, which I'm still making payments on. I would like to speak to someone to see my options. I was paying down my debt until June of 25 until I ran out of money. Thanks. Well, this guy's not going to need to worry. We'll talk to him if we haven't talked to him already. He doesn't need to go to court. Now, his Social Security is protected. He's 75 years old. If he's getting a pension, it's protected too. But he only gets Social Security. So twice the amount he gets in Social Security is protected. Now, he's going to get a job and he's going to have income. So if someone gets a judgment, are they going to be able to garnish his wages? He lives in, okay, there's a federal law that protects a minimum of $217.50 net per week in wages. That's $435 every 2 weeks, $945 a month. But some states protect more than that, and California is one of them. And California protects like $600 or $700 a week net in wages from garnishment, maybe more. It goes up every year based on certain rules, that minimum wage. And then it's probably more than that because California raised the minimum wage to $22 an hour. That's why, I saw on the news today, all these companies are leaving California because they can't afford to pay the minimum wage. You're a fast food worker for McDonald's, you're getting $22 an hour. But anyway, so no, his income's going to be protected. He's not going to need to worry about them doing anything. If he doesn't want to be hounded by creditors, he can call us. We can enroll him in helps, so they leave him alone. Okay? So this person contacts us and they say from Florida, it says, and I guess this was on I think this was on one of a YouTube video, either one we did with helps on one of our YouTube or one we did with someone else. And it says, I'm worried about what they will do to me when I can't pay all my bills. Well, I'm assuming this person is on Social Security. They're retired. They don't need to worry. They don't need, because their income is protected. Even if you get sued, you're not going to have to go to court. They can get a judgment. They can't take your money. I explained how twice the amount of your federal benefits is automatically protected in the bank account to which it's deposited from garnishment. And then if you don't want to be hounded by creditors, call helps 855-435. What is it down here? 7787 helps us or helps US. And you call us once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and we'll go over this with you. If you decide to enroll, you can roll over the phone. We'll click a button. You'll get an email that says, welcome to helps. You're going to get us the creditors you want to hear from. Our goal is within 24 hours to send a cease and desist letter. But when you enroll, we click a button. You're going to get an email, welcome to helps. And when we hang up the phone, if you got a call from a creditor right then, you tell them, I'm represented by helps law firm. Here's their number. Leave me alone. Don't call me anymore. They can't bother you because you're represented by us. And if they call us, you'll be in our system as being our client. So, we enroll people immediately when they call. When immediately when they want to enroll. You don't have to fill out a form. Okay. I joined helps last week. How long does it take to get the welcome kit? Well, the welcome kit, the most everything you need is when you enrolled when we sent you that email. Okay, Bruce. Okay. What's the welcome kit? Well, there's not really a kit. What we do is what we're going to need from you is we're going to ask you to get us proof of your income. We don't have to have it to represent you, but we want to get a copy of your Social Security. So if that statement you get from the Social Security, so that way, if it's not critical, if you can't find it, you can get it to us later. But that way, if we send a cease and desist letter and some creditor contacts us and they say, well, we want proof that this guy's getting Social Security, then we can X out the particulars and we give them proof that you get Social Security. And then we also want a client authorization form where you sign a form where you authorize us to communicate with your creditors. Because sometimes a debt collector will say, well, okay, you say that you represent these people. We got this cease and desist letter from you, helps, but we want proof that this person authorized you to send this letter. So when you sign that, we can send them a copy of that. Okay, that's what we get. You're going to get it. It goes by U.S. mail, and it might take a week or so for it to get there. We're really automated. It helps, so there's no delay. Um, yeah, the we don't want any of our clients to stress. If you're stressed, like this guy from Arkansas that called me today, he was really worried. And when I was done talking with him, I think he felt okay. And he was really relieved when I said, we're happy to talk with you and your wife together, because she wasn't a member of HELP, so she doesn't worry. You always call us if you're worried or scared. Okay, this guy calls. He calls for his wife, who bought a timeshare, and they used a credit card to make the down payment. And it turns out they can't keep up with the timeshare payment, and they felt they were pressured. They contacted their attorney general to make a complaint, but with no luck, and they both received Social Security, the husband and the wife. He says he may get an attorney for his wife to fight the contract, since allegedly one can't get a timeshare without their spouse is okay. I don't know about that. It doesn't matter, because they get Social Security. Uh, they can walk away. No need to worry. We have an email that talks. We have like 400 or 500 emails on different topics. We got a couple emails that talk about timeshares and why you don't need to keep up with the timeshare. I've told this before. A few years ago, I asked my former partners, one of which is my younger brother, and I said, "You guys ever remember in our tens of thousands of bankruptcies where a timeshare company has actually sued one of our clients for money?" And none of them said they could ever remember it. They don't sue, and it wouldn't matter if they did sue. Your income's protected. So no, sometimes they'll send a form saying, "Okay, you sign this, pay us $1,000, and we'll relieve you from your timeshare obligation." You could sign it and send it back. Don't send them $1,000 though. They just want to sell it to some other person they can sucker into buying the timeshare. So this was back in August. We talked to this person about the timeshare, and then they called again a month later in September, and she wanted to talk with a couple other people about what we do. One of our attorneys explained, we're not trusted estates attorneys. Um, they have a home as in a revocable living trust. Okay. Um, we don't fight debt. That we don't represent people in court. That's not what we do. If you want an attorney to represent your court, it's going to cost you a small fortune. Um, you don't need to. The person's very fired up about filing Wyndham on the timeshare, and the attorney says, I don't blame her. She needs to file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or state's attorney general. If they really want to fight it, get an attorney, but they can't afford an attorney. So then they call again, and that was in September. And they call this year in January 16th. Can we still help with timeshares? They ask. They probably did some investigation and found out it was just too complicated for them to fight this, and they couldn't afford an attorney. And yeah, we help people with timeshares, you bet. Our Barclays and Wyndham separate entities. Yeah, one is the credit card in which they made the down payment. Credit card has nothing to do with the timeshare. It's not their fault that you entered into that agreement to buy the timeshare. How quickly do we work? Well, real quick. When you can roll immediately over the phone and get us the credit, we'll send them a cease and desist letter. Do we have contracts? No, we agree contracts, a verbal contract over the phone. The fees for helps are really minimal, and most of the person would pay would be $40 for 24 months, $20 for 24 months free thereafter. It could be $30 for 24 months, $15 for 24 months free thereafter, or $20 for 24 months, $10 for 24 months free thereafter, depending on your household income. How do we notify them? We send a letter, and they want to know, well, does a husband and wife have to enroll separately? No, your husband and wife enroll together. Same fee. It's not twice the fee, one for each one. No. Then they called again. That was on January 20th, and they called again on January 23rd. Had more questions about the timeshare. What we need. In order to enroll, we're going to need your name, your mailing address, last 4 digits of your social security number, the month you were born, a debit card name, number, and expiration date. We click a button and you get an email from Helps that says, welcome to Helps. Says they'll likely choose to settle with a collector or attorney if a lawsuit is filed to avoid a lien or garnishment. They're not going to get sued on the timeshare. I mean, theoretically it's possible, but I'm 74, soon to be 75, and been doing this for like 48 years. And it's not gonna, they're not gonna get sued. My CPA told me to never ignore a 1099-C. Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second. When I was doing bankruptcies with my partners, we had fun with CPAs, and sometimes I'd tell people, "Gee, you can wipe out taxes through bankruptcy. You can wipe out taxes." I've probably wiped out millions of dollars in taxes, multi-millions, over the years. And we always used to tell people, sometimes I'd say, well, okay, how many cards are there in a deck of cards? Well, 52, right? How many aces? 4. So if I was playing cards with a CPA, I've got 52 cards. He's got 48. He doesn't have any of the aces. Doesn't understand bankruptcy and how it works. Or a lot of other. He doesn't have some of the kings. He doesn't have some of the queens. So if your only income is Social Security, you're not required to file tax returns. Or if you get a little bit extra money, you're probably not to file tax returns. And if you get a 1099-C, they don't need to worry about it. I mean, I did a video probably 4 years ago on February 9th with one of my partners. We talk about 1099-Cs on YouTube Live. You can go back and find it if you want. We have videos that talk about it too. But as someone said, if you do file taxes and you do file 1099-C, if you're insolvent, which means if your debt exceeds your assets, okay, then you can file what's called a Form 982 and there's no tax. But let's say you did owe taxes. Well, it would be very small. And if you owe taxes, if your income's like $2,500 or less, if you're a single person, or $3,500 or less, likely you're going to qualify for what's called currently not collectible status. You're not going to have to pay the tax. We don't see the IRS causing problems for seniors with 1099-Cs. Now, if you've got a whole lot of income and a whole lot of money, then yeah, it could be an issue, but not the clients we deal with. Is it necessary to file taxes if you receive Social Security and alimony? Only filed in 2020, but since my divorce, I'm not. Your I don't, I can't remember. Alimony shouldn't be required to file taxes. Okay, well, this is what artificial intelligence. It depends. For agreements filed after December 31st, 2018, alimony is generally not taxable to the recipient. If the agreement is for 2018 or earlier, the recipient must include it in taxable income, while the payer can deduct it. So the law changed in 2018. I vaguely remember that. Okay. Um, if you win 1,000 playing poker, would you report the winnings to the IRS? I don't know that. We don't give tax advice. We tell people how to avoid paying taxes. I mean, if you can afford to pay the taxes, sure, pay them. But if you qualify, but if you can't afford them, you can qualify for currently not collectible status and not have to worry about the taxes. Okay. Person contacts us from Indiana. I have 35,000 in credit card debt, and I'm fear of losing my home because in Indiana only a small amount of value is protected by bankruptcy laws. It's called a homestead exemption. I'm on Social Security and a small pension. The debt has continued to climb, and late fees, increased interest, and minimum payments are impossible to keep up with. I've contacted a debt management company, and they want me to set up a repayment plan that will take 40% of my income. I fear this will cause me to struggle. Duh. Yeah. To pay daily expenses and buy food. What can I do? Well, if you listen to the beginning of my video, or every day, I talk about debt management companies. I talked about national debt relief today. Do they tell seniors that their income is protected, their Social Security, their pension, their disability, their VA benefits, and that there's a means to stop the creditors from harassing? No, they don't do that. If they did that, you wouldn't sign up with them. Now, are they going to take your? It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors like credit card companies to take people's homes if they get a judgment, even if you have equity in the home over and above the homestead exemption in the state where you live, for a lot of different reasons. Maybe you own it with another person jointly. Maybe you have a debt. If you had a debt on it, they'd have to pay that debt. Plus, they'd have to pay your homestead exemption. And if they were to do that, which they don't do, then there's a way to stop that. There's other ways that it can be stopped. So this person in Indiana is going to need to worry. So if you happen to be a worry word, uh, helps was meant for you. That's why I started helps back in 2012, because I just there was too many seniors that were worrying, and The magic with helps is that we represent our clients ongoing. It's not just one time. It's not like you pay an attorney, he gives you the answer, he sends out a letter, and then he's done with you. No, you're a client literally forever. So you don't have to deal with collectors again, and you can call it as many times as you need to. And you've heard me say this before. My pet peeve, if someone calls and says, I've been really worried, I've been losing sleep at night, but I didn't want to bother you. No, you call us on the phone so we can go over this and explain to you why you don't need to worry. Yeah, we don't want you to worry. Okay. Person contacts us from Illinois. Both he and his wife get 2,000 each in Social Security. He's 66. He says, my wife is very ill and may pass away this year. We only get Social Security income. We own a home together. He has a car that they own outright. They have a credit card debt and a couple lawsuits. Very worried about a lien on his home as he will not be able to afford the payments after his wife dies. He won't be able to pay a lien if he needs to sell the home. Tried a reverse mortgage before, but they told him he had too many debts. We'll go over this with him. If the debt is in his name, his wife's name, when she passes away, the debt goes away. But they can't touch his Social Security. And anyway, he enrolled with helps, so he didn't need to worry about paying this debt anymore. I was served with my first summons to court. I'm a little nervous. That's what Bill Williams says. Well, you know, if you're a helps client and you get served with a summons, you get us a copy. We need the first three or four pages. And we're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued you, let him know that your income is protected, you're not going to pay the debt. We're going to call you, you're going to get a copy of that letter. And we're going to call you on the phone and explain why you don't need to go to court, why you don't need to worry. Okay? That's what we do. Okay. Person contacts us from Texas. Husband is 76, the wife is 71. They were signed up with the debt relief company paying $544 a month, and their only income was Social Security and a pension. And I can promise you that they were never told that their pension and their Social Security was protected. Instead, this company was taking $544 from them. When it comes to seniors, these companies are, with few exceptions, are scammers because they don't give seniors the complete information they need to know. Says they tried to get a loan, of course they didn't qualify. Okay, they considered a reverse mortgage. Okay, okay. We discussed what helps does, and then they called the next day. The debt relief company is not even working with our creditors. They're taking their fees first. Is that right? Yeah, that's the way they work. They take their fees at the beginning, and finally, after you've been with them for 6 months or a year, and you realize they're not doing anything, or you don't need them, they've already been paid. It's a great business for scammers or dishonest people to get into. Now, maybe with younger people, it's okay, but with seniors, they don't tell them about their protections. They're worried that if they enroll with their credit tanks, they won't be able to purchase a reliable car they desperately need. Well, they could purchase one now, but we've got an email that says affordable transportation. Sometimes You can buy a used car on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for cash. That'll be perfectly fine. Then you won't have to pay comprehensive and collision insurance. You only have liability. It can save you a lot of money. We talk to people about that. So they called back. That was on January 8th, 9th, and then they called 2 days ago. They're no longer enrolled with the debt relief program. They finally realized, get out of there. We read what we did, and they enrolled with ELPS. They're probably a lot happier, and they've got an extra $544 a month in their pocket that they didn't need to pay to this debt management company. Shame on these companies. Shame on them. So this person contacts us from. To be clear, I don't have to go to court. Well, if you're sued and you don't owe them, you get a summons and complaint. Okay, and you can go to court if you want to defend the lawsuit and you don't owe it. But if you owe the money and you go to court, you're going to lose. Why go to court? If you don't go to court, they're going to get a judgment they can't collect from you. So no, you don't need to go to court. Now, if you want to defend the lawsuit, you can. Most of our clients don't want to do that because they owe the money, and when they realize that there's nothing bad going to happen to them, they don't need to go to court. And you can always call us if you have questions. The number's down below there. Okay. This person contacts us from New York. One of our paralegals starts off by saying, such a sweet lady. All our clients are sweet. Anyway, was simply curious about us and needs help with credit card bills that she cannot pay. So you found out a little bit of help, and you're curious. That's a lot of times that's how it starts. So you can watch all these YouTube videos. You can get on our website and look at our website, and you can also call us on the phone multiple times. It says almost wasn't able to pay her rent because she was paying the debts instead. We informed her of her rights. She has a son. She's very proud of how hard he works. And then she called again on January 26th. Talked to another one of our attorneys. We completed the intake. We read what we did, quoted the fees, and she enrolled in HELPS. She banks with a credit union, owes them for a consolidation loan that she wants to continue to pay. They take out automatic payments, and she's happy with that. Well, that's fine. She has Social Security benefits and private pension, both of which are protected. We talked about how her income is protected automatically in the bank account if she's sued. She hasn't filed tax returns for a few years, but she's setting up an appointment to do that. We talked if she owes on the taxes, she can probably qualify for currently not collectible status. Call us, we can tell you how to do that. Very nice lady who was very happy to join HELPS. Yeah, tomorrow, we just got a few more minutes today. Tomorrow, we start 2 hours later. Person contacts us from Alabama. I live in New Orleans right now for a while. So I'm a Southerner. Alabama is just one state over. Went to Mobile, Alabama a couple months ago. Anyway, the husband's 76, the wife is 64, and the debt is in the husband's name. They get $1,800 in Social Security, gets VA benefits about the same amount. Wife gets just a little bit in Social Security, but she gets a fair amount in VA benefits. I think I may have already talked to this person about them. But anyway, they called back and we enrolled them in helps. So a company called refers cases to us. What they do is people call this company about bankruptcy. And when this company talks to someone who's on Social Security or getting a very little money, they know they can't afford bankruptcy, don't need to file bankruptcy. And so what they do is they refer them to helps and they just transfer the call to us. It's a hot transfer. So we talked to this person. The debt was only in the wife's name, explained how the bank account was protected. They had a pending lawsuit with a court date. We talked about bankruptcy costs. They couldn't afford it. They didn't need to do it. They're judgment proof. And we told them how they could, what helps does. And I don't know if they're going to call back or not. I think they probably did. They probably enrolled in helps. And they can still get their credit back if they're interested in doing that. We do have a program called 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score. We pay a company to, if you've been part of helps for 90 days, you can enroll in that program and you can get your credit back. Your credit is based on your recent credit history. Person calls us from Kansas. They're struggling with their debt and they're not current on their debt. They're currently being sued and they're fighting it. They don't need to fight it, but they're doing it. The wife is the only one on the lawsuit. Husband has 5 or 6 credit cards in his name that he's struggling with. And we explained to them how their income is protected. She didn't need to file the lawsuit. Last thing the note says is they're ready to enroll. So they probably enrolled in helps. So when they enroll in helps, they're going to give us that lawsuit. We're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued them, letting them know that this person's income is protected. We're going to tell the client, you don't need to go to court. They can't take your money. Explain how their money in their bank account is protected. We're going to send a letter to the creditors they owe money to, and they're going to be fine. They don't need to worry. Okay, so the next one I got here it's a long one, and it looks like we only have 2 minutes to go. So I'm going to finish up. Thanks for listening today. There was a lot of good questions. There's always good questions. There's never a bad question. If you're worried and you don't know what to do and you got questions, don't hesitate to call us. Okay, you'll be glad you did. Okay, there's never any pressure to enroll in helps. The cost is really minimal or free. We don't make enough money to pressure anyone ever to enroll in helps. And we're not into that. We just don't need to do that. We're just here to help seniors so they don't need to worry. Okay. If you're involved in debt management or debt settlement company and you're making a payment and they never told you your income was protected, you're being taken advantage of. Call helps. We'll go over this with you. We got videos that talk about this. We got YouTube's. We can answer all questions. You got a car you can't afford. You got an RV you can't afford. If you're wrapped up with a timeshare, if you owe taxes, if you owe state taxes, if you've been sued, if you're worried about a lien, give us a call. We'll go over these things. We got legal information to provide you that's going to help you understand your rights so you don't need to worry. So thanks for calling. It's been an hour. Have a rest of the great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow 2 hours later. God bless, and give us a call. Bye.